hashtag blackout Tuesday, and the hashtag fog as an access. So this is what Blackout Tuesday looked like. It occurred on June 2nd, 2020 in response to the George Floyd protests. It started with a music industry account saying that they would encourage others in the music industry to follow their lead, to leave the studios for the day, log off, and sit and listen and learn about world events and take a day off of the hustle and participating in entertainment to actually allow this protest movement to take over some entertainment spaces. And it became heavily proliferated by everyday users and other celebrities, and it essentially created a blizzard of content that made it very difficult for the movement to continue and inhibited some of the crucial timeline for Black Lives Matter activists to continue to communicate their work that they had been they're the most qualified to speak to. So the problem is there was an algorithmic obstacle to the Black Lives Matter movement. It occurred when a response to protest by the music industry was adopted and repeated in a viral act. So essentially it was a response to a response, taking the entire conversation very far away from the originating movement, and it created a void of new content on the key hashtag. So I will explain how this occurred in just a moment. But essentially, celebrities, I'll show you what it looked like right here. Celebrities were posting black squares alongside everyday people. The more celebrities posted, the more everyday people posted. If you go to the most popular post, which is one side of a thread, it should be on, say, if you scrolled up a little bit here, there'd be a link saying the most popular post. It would be celebrities like Ariana Grande's black post without much information to learn more. And then there'd be another one to the side which would look exactly the same. It would be everyday users posting the exact same thing. As you can see, this was just a screenshot of 15 million posts, and you could scroll and scroll and scroll, and it would be all this black squared. So they created a blackout on a crucial conversation. And as you can see, this is hashtag Black Lives Matter. So what happened was Black Lives Matter was co-opted by Blackout Tuesday users. So new learners and continuing participants could not access learning materials on anti-racism or Black Lives Matter or collective action resources or leadership guidance during a national event. It was intended as an act of solidarity, but it occupied too much space in the algorithms because everyone was posting it. It pushed out the actual movement. And the leaders who were speaking to this, and the allyship became white noise, and it created a communication barrier. And finally, this added element that started with that original post of some folks saying that they were going to log off and let others speak. Not only did their posting make that impossible for others to speak, but the result of being silent to listen made it impossible for them to actually hear. Not only were their black posts making it impossible for leaders to come in and speak, but these squares also came with this connotation of logging offline and unplugging for the day, which was exactly where this digital movement needed people not to be. They needed them to be online and learning, so they couldn't, and they weren't even online if they could. So it was a serious clustered problem. The trend of black squares went viral, but it failed to meet the needs of the protest momentum. It backfired. Although these posts were supposed to draw attention to Black Lives Matter, it made it so that folks couldn't get past this initial shallow barrier that sometimes seemed abstract and confusing, and it blocked the ability of key movement leaders to communicate crucial information, sharing relevant voices, and educate those who claim to be allies and those with privilege, because those hashtags were co-opted. So I first became interested in this topic because I was working during the Black Lives Matter protesting for an advocacy nonprofit, and we were serving as an intermediary for amplifying voices, and we were letting people take over our Instagram and doing Instagram lives, and we weren't actually being able to even reach our own audiences because it seemed like nobody was online and nobody was engaging or coming to the lives, and we couldn't figure out why. And I thought it was an isolated event, just another day of struggling to get those social media analytics you hope for. And then shortly thereafter, and in the days to come, news agencies and activists came on and said, this is controversial, we're going to discourage it, this is what's happening. So it was treated as a 24-hour news cycle issue, but I hope to prove with this article that it is the natural progression of movements in an age of virality where everyone has a platform, and because it is enabled on algorithms, especially for Instagram, which is so image focused, where you can't necessarily search by caption content, but only by the hashtag and the recentness of it, and what's popularized kind of without thoughtful dimension. So there are significant lessons in how it misfired, and it's not just about the obligations of an algorithm to change, but also how movements in the digital age moving forward will need to thoughtfully guide mass participation and penetrate the haze of misdirected and ineffective participation when getting so popular that it becomes impossible to communicate within itself. So, algorithm, this paper seeks to examine these complex interactions among the technological barrier actors of Instagram user design, the nature of the hashtag funnel, and the user engagement so concentrated it began to step on itself, and required emergent leaders to practice reflexivity at how conversations and images and information moves on those platforms. McLuhan says the medium is the message and the content of the mediums is just literature studies, and here we didn't have that literature studies. We weren't able to just talk about the movement, but also how we can talk about the movement in dealing with the challenges of people populating these spaces and the tool not working as one would hope. So one such impact considers the intended meanings of the performance of the box, but also their impact as a movement inhibiting white noise. And the second, with the meme as a projected participation, a participatory culture, from that camera witnessing text that we were reviewing, being distorted by its distribution. So being distorted by how algorithm distributes it, and then how it changes meaning and how others receive it, and then continue to populate those repetitions and mimicking this game of telephone and meaning. Exploring networked public utilizing the technology as a form of reorganizing social groups and political information through Instagram's prioritization filters and hashtag structures, as well as unaccounted for impacts from unintentioned and intentioned communications being distributed unexpectedly by existing algorithmic pathways. So our language in terms is, can we improve our tools to describe what happened here? What happens when platforms receive a tsunami of accidental occupation by people intending to participate, but only serving to mute the voices they claim that they are stepping out to amplify? And do we look to, and the issue here specifically is that they were saying we're not going to post our everyday posts, but those everyday posts would have been sorted to other hashtags. And by taking over these hashtags, they actually occupied a space. So just to keep in mind on the time, key points on language to address is what terms can we use to describe this occupation, this usurping, this appropriation. If it's and do we credit the blame to publics, mobs, allies, privileged, etc. And then what is the correct qualifier for what occurred there? Is it accidental? Is it incidental? What happened here? And then the squares that had the intention of supportive participation, can they still be considered trolling? They have a very similar impact. They infiltrated, pushed out, and harmed the integrity of a serious communication, and were not the intended speaker, and inhibited the intended recipient. But it does not seem to be a perfect verbiage. And again, without a joke or a personalization spin, is this a meme? It's certainly an event. It's a phenomenon. It's in the news. But is it a meme? And what then do we call the black square artifact? And finally, I would like to propose describing this outcome, this incident, and the communications as a process as hashtag fog. Because it was intended to be a literal blackout, but it was the wrong kind of blackout. It was supposed to be an overwhelming spread of solidarity, but it essentially turned out the lights on something far more important. So critical social analysis comes up. Can we connect the proliferating of this content as a cost, a negative byproduct to FOMO, fear of missing out, performative allyship, performative engagement from that camera citizen witnessing meaning shaping? Is it emblematic of a widespread desire to help through privileged individuals, through allies, but as an ineptitude and unwillingness to do so in a significant and meaningful way? How can we shape and correct how those occur? How can we guide how those occur? And what comparable protest movement text this semester can support that understanding? So I will be looking at news cycle sources, CNN, The Guardian, New York Times, but also some really significant texts in media ecologies and participatory cultures, among others that I'll get to in just a moment. And then how does mass participation as collective action become white noise, become hashtag fog, a diffusion of responsibility, and enable hegemonic dominant ideology, effectively turning disruptive, aka actually effective activism, into a pop culture trend, where pop culture cobbles the protest movement, which is part of my literature review. It's another article I'm intending to cite, but pop culture also swallowing a counterculture that is supposed to disrupt and change pop culture without actually embracing change and performing a transformation or undergoing transformation. Finally, my literature review, I'm out seeking to provide a framework for establishing the activistic ecosystem of Black Lives Matter movement on Instagram during Blackout Tuesday, looking at the algorithms, using media study, and looking at ANT and the artifacts, and then it's some of its implications in society. And I'm going to use case studies, news reports, and accounts, but also I want to support it by cases, by the theoretical foundations we've gained this semester, looking at social constructions of technology, looking at actor network theory, political spaces of platforms from Funk and Wilson, medium versus literature from McLuhan, the journalistic applications of Ant by Turner, Bratich's meme and social movements, and kind of looking at the connotations of progress there, where it's not all mindless trolling. Juris offering some cases of effective solidarity and the misapplication of human action. The misapplication of a tool by human action through that Scott lens, and the benefits and challenges of the urge for participants to self-document and publish as a means of self-identifying a role in the event, supported by Andén-Papadopoulos and the conversational bodies of these events, as impacted by the many Boyd texts we've worked with, and finally Dunbar-Hester's emergent text applied to an isolated group and event with social groups. So these are my sources if anybody would like to pause and take a screenshot or a glance, and that's page 2. Thank you so much for your attention.